Welcome to Bike Tech Espresso. I'm Luby, and today we're going to be talking about a crankset bottom bracket alignment.
So just a little bit more of why we're doing this. You can see this is my drive side crank arm. You can see it's the spacing between the frame of the bike and the crank arm is very less. You can almost see you've only got a few millimeters of clearance, and there can be rubbing happening, especially when you're under load, like going up a hill. And if we look at the non-drive side, you can see that I have essentially a full finger of clearance between the crank arm and the frame. So that's why we need to put those spacers on the drive side or the right side and move this whole thing to the right so we can even that gap.
So first things first, to start off with some of the things that we're going to need for this job, we're going to need for the crankset that I have an 8mm hex key. You're going to need some 24mm spacers, which are going to go over that crankset that's inserting into the bottom bracket. And then just to make sure everything's in spec at the very end, to tighten it to the 40 to 50 Newton meters, I'm going to be using a torque wrench, also with an 8mm head. So now we're going to use the 8mm hex key. We really want to hold this side because it's probably under load. Make sure it's all the way in there, really firmly in there. And then if you're doing it in this method where you're holding the left side, this side you pull towards you. As you see, there was a lot of tension built up. So you have to get rid of that initial go and then fully unscrew this crank arm. So I put the non-drive crank arm over there. Now we need to get this side off. Sometimes it can go out, but you might actually have to use a mallet. That's one of the things I forgot to say. And just hit it out a little bit. Now switching to the view of this side, what it looks like now, after hitting with the mallet, you should be able to just pull it out. And there you go. The crankset is out.
Before continuing now, it would be a good idea to clean all of this muck out from your bottom bracket. You can use a blue rag, and you should probably do the same thing to your crankset here. Clean out the inside, clean out the non-drive side, and then we'll continue.
Once we have it to the point where we're happy with our clean job, because you should clean it before you do any reinstallation, we're gonna put some grease on this side and kind of on the pivoting, like rotating parts of this crankset. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those 24mm diameter washers and slide them on to this side. I'm going to use 2, and each of them are 1mm, giving me a total of 2mm spacer on the drive side. So let's start with the grease. I'm going to go straight onto here. There's different grease you can use. I think this is the Park Tool one. That's the high performance grease for like bearings and things. This should suffice perfectly for this. And then we're going to add these two guys on. They're going to sit right there, giving us about 2mm of extra sway. So moving it to the other side, and we'll see if 2mm is going to be enough for us. Maybe we're going to need more. So this is the drive side now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit more grease here to this bearing. I want to make sure everything's nice. Then we're going to take our crankset, our drive side crankset, and we're going to just insert it in here with those spacers. There we go. So before we start, let's check the spacing. Might be hard to see from that angle, but I can tell you that there is a lot more space now on this side than there was before. And this looks pretty good, but I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in one more spacer. So first, let's apply a little bit more grease in here. kind of where the bearings are at the very end. So now we've applied some grease and now we're ready to reinstall it. So they go at 180 degrees opposite of each other. So if this guy's facing down, this guy should be up. As you see, it kind of inserts in there. And now let's do the opposite way. Go to the right to start tightening this. Okay, so now it got a little bit harder. So I'm going to stop and we're going to check the spacing. So after putting 3 spacers, because I added the extra one, I checked the spacing on this side. It looks good. And the spacing on this side is way better than it was before. And I'll have enough play with this Q factor, essentially adjustable washer. So I'm going to use the torque wrench to get it to 45 to 55 Newton meters. Please use the Newton meter side, not the foot-pound side. I almost made that mistake. So once we have that set, I'm going to do about 50 Newton meters. It might help to go like this. That means we're done. So being done with that, you just now need to make sure this thing is going to spin properly. And you can still adjust this essentially washer on this side. Some Shimano cranks have that you can adjust it here to have some play. You just need to make sure you can still adjust it, because if you do too many spacers and you tighten it, you're going to squeeze everything together and then your crank won't rotate. So this is good and this is perfect.